I thought it would be fun in my position of great power to do something that would fulfill a fantasy that I had when I was a kid. I used to wonder, how could I meet the comedy writers who were successful and that kind of thing. The gentleman I write, Steve Stoliar, had a kind of boy's dream come true. He was involved in getting a Marx Brothers film out of the mothballs, met Groucho, came to his attention. Groucho found that Steve knew his Thurber and Perlman and Benchley and so on, and eventually Steve worked for him as an archivist and amanuensis, and got to sit there while S.J. Perlman came to the house and that kind of thing. And as a young writer who has had, how many scripts sold so far?
3.
3. In how many years?
Since January.
Yeah.
Very good.
Now, is there anything you want to know, having seen the show so far, would you rather?
The only thing I want to know is what in the world I'm doing on this show with these gentlemen here.
Well, actually, you're the one who's going to throw the pie that we've
Thank you very much. I should explain that I had a coat and tie on backstage, but I heard Mr. Lloyd say that we don't need any more new writers in Hollywood, so I thought I would come out as a Hollywood producer.
All right. Well, can you think of any unpleasant hard knocks that you've had that, or surprises, or...
Besides putting on that chest hair?
Thank you, yeah. I had it transplanted from down here.
When you first handed in a script, did you expect they'd say, great, that's fine, we'll do it?
Well, no, because before I was a writer, I worked as a secretary at Universal Studios, and I got to see what it was like and understand that it's such a collaborative thing and that nothing ever ends up as it began. Yeah. And there's so many different, the network people and standards and practices and...
What was the first script?
That I wrote?
Yeah, I mean that you sold.
That it was an episode of Codename Foxfire, which some of you may recall, or not, that with Joanna Cassidy. And
oh yeah,
a short-lived series.
I almost said short-lived, but you would have gotten me on that. Yeah. And since then, I've written Simon & Simon and A Murder, She Wrote.
Were they all on assignment, or did you write them on what we call spec or speculation?
On assignment.
Yeah, good.
Bye.
Did it bye? Can we have the next young writer, please? Okay.
How did you get it on assignment?
Well, I knew the producers of the show from when I worked at Universal.
As a secretary and had some things on him, I know.
I used to think that's how I could get in the business. If I could get a job typing scripts, I could get jobs as an actor.
And sleeping with the producer.
But did you ever... I almost missed one.
No.
They didn't murder your first script or anything?
They did not, no, they had not murdered it. And also I understood going in that that's just the nature of it. And if I wanted to write just for myself, I'd write poetry or plays or something like that. But it is, you know, I think the nature of television that there are so many other people. It's like passing a bill through Congress. You write something and then it gets amended and appended and switched around. And
does that change as your status grows, though? I mean, Larry, can you now say you're going to do it my way or not?
No, no, you can't do that. But most of the changes that take place in series scripts have to do more than anything with the fact that there is a continuing staff. There are people who maintain the quality control and the tone of the show. You can't really expect freelance writers to have the same appreciation of what's going on inside the company, you know, inside the cast. And so that's not to say that a good deal of rewriting can be arbitrary and, you know, based on ego rather than real production requirements. But I think that the people who do series, when they get a script that really works for them, they're very relieved that they don't have to do a lot of work that week. You know, so it's not get out the pencil, here comes another one, you know.
But do they still have the anonymous nitwits that Fred Allen described with great humor but also bitterness, who have nothing to say, but the car sponsor's wife decides the line
They're not
isn't
anonymous
funny.
anymore. They're right out there, nitwit.
Oh, they're labeled now, but there's the truth in packaging. Yeah. Now, with a guy like Steve, what advice would you give him if, for example, after 6 more years, nobody buys any more of his scripts?
He's off to such a good start, you know, that I don't know.
If he has perseverance and
another shirt.
Another shirt.
It's funny that the comedy writers are sitting here looking like brokers, stockbrokers. A serious writer looks like a Magnum PI.
Well, he's wearing the lining to his jacket, that's what.
What questions do you have, Steve?
Yeah. Anything at all.
Hully G. I don't know what comes to mind. I know I have questions for Pat McCormick, but certainly cannot be repeated in front of these people. But,
Catch him in church. He's really filthy there.
But you're also a performer.
Communion is
I'm
raspberry
not a
this month.
No, but Steve has occasionally got something good. He can. What Pat just say? I don't want
He
to.
said communion is raspberry this Sunday.
See, I do go to church. See?
Here, I'm a friend of yours, and I brought you out here for this.
No, if you have a question.
I'll get back at you for it some other time.
Yeah, there must be a. There must be a.
Why don't
way,
you have Steve stand down here and read his last script aloud to the audience?
Oh God! You realize the kind of brain that would conceive a line like that?
Cruel.
We'll make suggestions as he
David,
goes along. That's the way to learn.
It can't be much different from the way things actually work out.
Yeah, but and we can pinch him and things like that.
Do you put a lot of comedy in your scripts? Or?
Well, the scripts that I've done so far have been, they're ostensibly action-adventure, but they have some humor in them, so I try to inject that. And it depends on the nature of the show. You can't just, you can't just take a serious show and have people trading quips and that sort of thing unless it's the nature of the show.
There's a new sort of abusive use of comedy, I've noticed, in motion pictures lately, even on television. You see the most violent pictures, the Commandos and the Remo Williams and the Bonds, and people do the most outrageous things to one another physically.
Yeah.
They hurt, they kill, and then they do a punchline. And the audience roars
Yes.
and takes the complete edge off the fact that we've just witnessed mayhem, murder, and worse. Worse?
I can think of an example. I remember that. It didn't strike me as an insight as it has you, but I remember an early Bond film where Lotte Lenya played the toad lady with the thing and viciously trying to stab him in the groin in various places with a blade coming out
It
of
had
her shield.
curare or something on it.
Yeah, and then he killed her in some ghastly way through a meat grinder or something. And they
James
said,
Bond's always doing, they say,
Yeah,
I'm going to
what-
give you a vasectomy with a butter knife, and he's doing jokes,
That's true. That's what I was going to say. And then getting back to my punchline. And then over her dead body, he said, well, she had her kicks. Not a very good joke.
Not a good
In fact,
joke,
a
no.
wretched one.
But again, it's comedy abuse,
Yeah, but is that what you mean?
That's what I
Sort of
mean,
try
yeah.
to take the curse off having disemboweled someone?
No, they don't take the curse off it. What they do is get the audience or viewer to laugh at a very, very violent act and think, and diffuse the fact that this was a very serious thing that happened.
It makes it acceptable. If you
Yeah.
can joke about it, you can't be a bad person.
That's
Despite
right.
the fact that you put somebody's eyes out with an ice pick. If you can joke about it,
How bad could it have been?
how bad could it have been?
Right.
Is there anything that... Oh, do you realize what I almost said with McCormick sitting here? Is there
Well, it was either a menuensis, perpetuity, or a feat. I don't know.
No, I almost said, is there anything you can't make a joke about? But look at his eyes just burning and beaming.
The file is running around.
No, I can't. I can't think of anything.
I don't
I'm
think...
sorry I interrupted that. I just realized that. I very seldom.
What were your dying words, Pat?
Oh, Pat's going to feel guilty.
Just before whatever I said just last time. Suck eggs for a better America. I have no idea.
Oh, are you selling those bumper stickers again?
Yes, that's right.
Pat's done at least 100 of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life, and I can't think of two we could tell here. Can you? The manhole cover thing, the...
If you got a minute, sure. You want to get into Pat McCormick stories? As Dick mentioned, he and Pat and I were the Merv Griffin writers on a show that required no writing, self-evidently. And
What a lucky place to start.
in New York City, and so we had time for very long lunches. We would meet with Merv to plan the day's comedy at about 1:45, which we knew we could write the following morning and go to lunch at 2. And the large leprechaun on my right would thereupon destroy our peace of mind and our digestion in a number of midtown restaurants in which we are no longer welcome. His specialty was getting the attention of a captain or a maitre d', somebody who seemed to be snubbing the table. And Pat, in those days, dressed even more formally than now. He wore 3-piece suits, very expensive Wall Street garb. And I remember the top of the 6s when we couldn't get the captain's attention. He said, I believe this will do it. Unbuttoned his shirt and began putting butter pads down his entire body. And you'd be amazed how quickly we were the center of a great deal of attention by the...
That's without spelling anything.
Can I tell a Pat McCormick story? I have a Pat McCormick story, and I have only just met you, but this is because it was told to me by Jack Kaplan, who I assume you know, that Pat and Jack were driving past the Braille Institute one evening and noticed that all of the lights were out in the building, and Mr. McCormick said, "Ah, they must be working late tonight."
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah, that's great.
But I get into such a thing where, because I believe, underneath everything, I do have a philosophy of that people are too inhibited. So, and so
No one in this
I go
audience
too
is
far
safe.
to remind them that they are, you know. And
Yeah.
I'll never forget when I streaked the Tonight Show, and I did it purely, you know. I didn't wear any loincloth or anything.
This is the man. This is true now.
And I could not understand the furor of the thing. There's no joke here, except that one woman screamed. I think she recognized me. But to me, it seemed the next day on the school bus, they said to my kid, who was about 8, they said, "Did you know your dad ran nude on national television last night?" And he said, "Oh, he does something like that every day." And
Ben has seen a
a lot of times I can't.
But you genuinely, Pat's a curious combination of things. He's a jackass, a pantaloon, a comic, and he's also a track star at Harvard, a history major at Harvard, and that sort of thing. He never wants those things to be
Mostly a jackass.
But I have seen you embarrass yourself once or twice when you realize, my God, I went too far, didn't I? Or something.
Yeah, that was.
After the show, the one thing he'll remember, I promise you, is that he interrupted my one line. He's going to feel bad about that. Steve, can you remember the great warm feeling you got when you wrote some monologue for me for the Tonight Show, and I actually said one of your lines?
Yes, and it was, as you said, the most frightening and exhilarating thing you can do, because it was the first thing I ever really did professionally was write stuff for Dick when he was guest hosting the Tonight Show. And the production assistant positioned me in a spot where I could see the audience and Dick at the same time, and I knew it would either be the most exhilarating or terrifying thing. And one after another, the jokes, nothing really wowed them, but then I came to understand that the monologue stuff never really devastates them, and it was gratifying. And the joke that you weren't quite sure of was the one that did the best.
The one that had to do with a valley girl.
Yeah.
And gagged me with a spoon. Now imagine 5 years from now, somebody trying to figure out, what could that have meant?
Even now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had to ask what it meant, showing what an old fogey I am, and I was guaranteed it would get a laugh. I went out and did it, thinking, oh, I'm never listen to these people again. And it did get the biggest
So
laugh.
that's interesting. I mean, now a writer doesn't have to do that. You went out and did something that you didn't quite understand, right? You put yourself on the line and got a laugh, and you were as surprised as anybody, right?
I was part of the audience as well as the man who
That's
delivered
very
the
admirable.
line. Yeah. Well,
He lost that show soon after that.
For not knowing what he was talking
Right
about.
after that, they had Joan Rivers be permanent guest host.
as a matter of fact, history will show that it's almost entirely true. We're almost out of time. Aren't you glad I haven't asked anyone what his funniest line is he ever wrote or ever heard?
I will when we run out of time.
We're almost out of time. We'll be right back.
They must be working late tonight. That's wonderful.
This is the sort of discussion I wish would continue, because what?
I doubt.
I doubt we'd ever run out of laughs.
My thanks.
My thanks tonight to 3 of the what?
Funniest
Writers I know. Larry Gelbart, David Lloyd, and Pat McCormick. I make this up as I go along. Thank you, David. I thought that'd be funny. Listen, gentlemen, this has really been wonderful. I would like to point out to you that we've made history tonight. We have had a show where we talked about comedy in which nobody said there are 7 basic jokes, or where do jokes come from? Prisons.
Right. 7 basic prisons.
There goes history.
The 7 prisons, of course. Anyway, to McCormick.
Automobiles for the Dick Cavett Show provided courtesy of Pontiac. Accommodations for the Dick Cavett Show staff courtesy of the Beverly Garland Hotels in North Hollywood. In Sacramento, the #1 corporate travelers hotel.